It just always seems to hit you all at once for whatever reason. And I'm talking about signs of spring. Starting your seeds. I just got mine in the mail. I'm excited to get that going. Working in the yard and spring cleaning, all those fun things that finally let you get outside. And of course, with that, we've got some spring-related projects to work on. And our first one today is a new little centerpiece, a floral centerpiece. We've got a new flower that we're going to assemble. And it's pretty easy, actually, especially the container. It's going to go quick. Now, before we get started on the actual assembly, we're going to go through just a quick little tidbit on inking, just so I can show you what I did on my flowers here. So let's just get started with that first. So let me just go over this real quick. What we're making is these flowers here, and our art director, Ron, kind of invented these. I'm not exactly sure that they're based on any specific flower. Well, we call them Posies. They're very similar, using some nice violet and pinks, just to kind of get the spring season started. Spring was actually yesterday. So, first day of spring anyway. Let's take a look at some of the pieces that we'll be inking. Now, that's one that we're going to be putting together here in just a minute. And there's one that I have not inked yet, so we're going to do that. So there's a total of 6 flowers in this little centerpiece. So they go pretty quick, and typically what I do is use my little ink pads, and if I'm just working a few little areas, I'll use my hand. But since there's going to be a total of 12 little leaves, and then we've got some stamens, I took the more efficient route where I actually put my little felt applicator on this little doohickey here. And it just kind of makes the work a lot quicker. So let me show you what I did. Let me get some more ink pads here. So I'm gonna grab my little ink pad and get a fresh one on here just so that I don't get anything mixed up. Now I already did the purple one, and I found a darker purple based on the hue of this paper. So in this case, if you have like a darker pink, that would work. The pink didn't show up as well for me, so I ended up just using a red, which is very close to the pink. And I'll go ahead and apply it onto there, and then just kind of brush a little bit of it off. I don't want it to be that heavy when I first get started. And then what I'll do is just kind of start off the paper and work my way up to it, and just kind of use that sort of a motion just to kind of create a nice gradient look. Okay, just quick and fast, and you can see how it just kind of adds a little touch to the tips there. And that's about it. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, you can go in as far as you want, or you can stay out towards the tips. You know, you might want to cut out a couple extras just to experiment with your inking and see what looks the best for you. I'm just going to go with the tips here. I guess I could maybe go a little bit further in. Either way. Okay. So there we go. Okay. And that is pretty much what I do for, or what I did for the flowers. Okay. So again, the inking process is optional, but highly recommended, as it does give a nice touch to the actual flowers. So those are ready. Now, as far as the little calyx pieces, I didn't actually ink any of these. I'm going to leave them alone. There are these stamen pieces, and you could take a nice green or a blue-green, whatever you have handy. And I've got this kind of bluish green. I'm going to reuse this pad here. And I don't think I didn't keep one to ink. Let me see if I did maybe. Yeah, you know what? I already did them all, but I'll show you the technique anyway. And this is actually straying from my usual dewdrop inks, but I didn't have one that worked for me, so I'm just going with this. And what I did with this, obviously because of these little frills here and the delicateness of these cuts, you don't want to do it in a circular motion because you're going to push in these and possibly breaking them. So what I did was I just kind of just ran the ink pad like that. And since it only took a few seconds, I flipped it over and I did the other side. Okay, you don't have to worry about doing the other side of the flower because of the way that we're going to train and curl them. Okay, so that's that, pretty straightforward. There's also this stamen portion here. That one I definitely did with a green. So I've got a nice green color there. Let me grab one of my ink pads. And I did basically the same thing as I did with those other, with the other stamens. I just kind of grazed it like that. And I would do both sides of this as well. And then again, just gives it a nice little gradient. Adds a little more interest. Makes it look more natural. Okay, so that's basically what you want to do with that. And that just leaves the leaves. That just leaves the leaves. Let me find my blue-green pad again. I reuse these until they just get ridiculously fluffy and impractical. So back to the blue-green. I already did this one. I saved one here, and you can see the difference and what that looks like. So just get enough ink on there, rub some of it off, and then I'm going back and forth with this one and just kind of rubbing it almost in like a, I don't know, like a U shape or kind of like a half crescent moon shape, just along the natural curve of the leaf. Okay, and that's it. Pretty simple, okay? That's all it takes. And it goes really quick. Once you get in the zone, I was listening to some talk radio while I was preparing the 4 flowers that I did, which you can see here. I did 4 of them. Oh no. I did 4 of them off camera, but you can see what they look like. Pretty straightforward. And they're gonna go together very easily as well. So that is the 101 as far as the inking goes. And then there's as far as, there's a few little accent pieces that we're gonna put on the actual container. And again, instead of just going by hand and inking every little blade of grass here, I just did my little circular motion and just hit the tips of them. And just give them a little interest. You don't have to spend forever doing it. These pieces definitely lend themselves to this technique. I wouldn't do this if I was trying to, say, ink the edge of like an overlay for a card, because it's just gonna look crazy. This is crazy enough to where if you do it this way, it's gonna look fine. Okay, so pretty simple. The only thing that I had to use my manual technique on was the little fence portion. So I don't need this anymore, and this is the fence portion that I'm talking about here. You can see the 3 that I already did here. Okay, and this is just very subtle. It doesn't have to be intense, but it does, once all said and done and the project's complete, all these little steps and all of these little efforts that we put into this really help the product and the end product shine and just look really, really nice. So again, instead of that applicator, I just put my little finger behind here, and I just literally graze the surface while trying to hit the edge as well, and just work my way around until I get the entire perimeter of each of these little pieces of fence, posts or fence pieces, covered with this, it's a light blue. Very springy looking, especially when you contrast it on this white pearlescent paper. Okay, so again, completely optional, but you'll see, you know, if I was to make two of these projects, one with and one without the inking definitely gives the project some realism, and it just really makes it pop and stand out. And plus, it's fun. I really look forward to working on floral projects for Dreaming Tree, because I know that typically what I do is I'll pre-prep, you know, if there's any redundancy, if there's 2 or 3 or 4 of the same flower, I'm not going to bore you with doing the same flower 4 times. So I'll put on a podcast or some news or some music, and I just kind of zone out, and I'll do my inking and my assembly, and that's probably, well, I would say it's on an even plane when it comes to some of my favorite things to do as far as running Dreaming Tree. Definitely one that tops the list is interacting with you guys, whether it be via email or on the phone. You guys are really fun to talk to. So this, as you can see, does take a little bit more time because I am not able to get as much pressure on this because I'm kind of holding it in midair. I could put it on the ground, but then I don't think it's as accurate, and it'd be a little, not on the ground, but on my table, I should say. Then it's just not as accurate and consistent. This so-called brush stroke that I have here with my hand when I, you know, hit the edges, it's fairly consistent. And that's kind of what I look for when I'm doing my inking. And I like consistency, and I don't like to overdo it with the ink. I want it to be there, but I want it to complement and not take over and overshadow the rest of the project. I don't want anyone's eye to focus on the inking. I want it to be kind of secondary, but also important. So that's that. Okay, that is inking 101 for this project, and I guess we can either start with the assembly of the container or work on a flower, and that's what we're going to do next. All right, so at this point, you're going to have all of your pieces inked if you decide that you're inking them. And I'm going to put this over to the side for now. We can begin putting together our actual structure and getting that all done. So the base is made up of these 3 pieces. We got 2 sides here, then we've got 2 sides here, and there's a bottom. So we're going to construct that. And you always want to begin by just folding everything at the score marks here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to glue these two ends together to form one long piece. So it's time to get some glue out. Make sure your glue bottle is clean, and mine's not. Okay. Got one more little section here that I just needed to fold, and again, we're gonna just start by getting some glue on the tab on one of these pieces. Doesn't matter which one. I'm starting with this one that has part of the bottom connected here. And I'm just gonna run that glue right out to the very edge so that we get a nice clean seam. And just line that up. Make sure that the bottom here lines up as well, and try to butt it up against that score mark as best as you can without going over it. And then you can kind of fold it in on itself and kind of run your finger along the edge here. These tabs here should pretty much sit on top of each other if you have it connected accurately, and that's good enough. Okay, so we've got that connected. Give that a second to set, and then we'll go ahead and take our glue and apply it to the other tab. And again, I'm going to run that glue out to the very edge so we don't have any piece of paper pulling away from where it needs to be. And then again, get it nice and aligned and connected. Get it right up to that score mark, right up to that edge. And you could put it down on your surface and press down from the inside. And once it gets a little tackier, if you need to make any subtle adjustments, you can by just kind of scooting things around. And that looks good. And we've got some layers that are going to go over this, so I think we'll be able to hide any imperfections we may have, but I don't think there should really be any. That went together very easily. Okay, so now we're going to close up the bottom. I'm going to move the actual bottom out of the way for just a moment while I apply my glue to the remaining 3 tabs here. So I'll just get a little bit in the center, and then I'm going to I'll throw a little line right out to the very edge, and I'm going to, of course, spread that out to the edge so it looks nice and clean. Okay. And I guess one thing I can talk about right now is I often see people asking, how do I not get so much glue on my hands? Well, first off, I don't use that much. I try to make it sparse, and then I just rub it off. You can use a little damp rag if you have an apron, or if you have some craft jeans, and just rub it off wherever. Just try to rub it off while it's wet before it sets. 'Cause, I mean, at the end after I finish the 3 projects from each bundle, I do have a little bit of a layer of glue on my fingers, but it doesn't seem to hinder anything, so whatever works for you. Okay, so we got the bottom on. That looks pretty good. And then we have this little piece here that we're going to put inside to, number 1, cover up the little tabs here, but 2, to make it a little more structurally sound. So just pop that right in, just like that. And ultimately it doesn't really matter because we're going to be putting a little block of foam in here. But it does make it look nice, and that's what it's all about. Okay, so next we're going to put these little gray pieces on. In my case, it's gray. It may be a different color for you. And those are just going to go on flush like that. We've got one with 4 posts, one with 3 posts. Okay, so let's get those glued on. This is fairly straightforward. And again, don't overdo it on the glue. Just go easy on it. I'm going to work these posts first, make sure I get them out to the tips, the glue that is, just to make sure that everything stays on nicely for me. And get that on there. Get it lined up with the posts. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom. I think as long as you get the tips of the posts lined up properly, it should automatically kind of fall into place on the bottom. So I'm just going to go with that notion and that theory. And just put this on my table and flatten it out. That way we're not warping the actual container, keeping everything nice and flat. And this definitely helps push that glue into the little texture parts of the paper. So that's sitting nicely. Now we can move on over to our next side here. And we'll grab one with 3 posts. And as you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory. This is probably, I'd say, one of the easier containers that we've made for any of our paper flower projects. So it'll be fun. I think overall this is probably one of the easiest paper projects we've released. I do have some, well, I don't know if you can see them behind me. There's these set of 3. We got a buttercup, what other, I forget what other ones are on there. It's 3 different flowers and they all have the same vase. Those were pretty straightforward, but I want to say that this one's even easier. Okay, so getting that next layer on, just like that. And that looks good. Okay, and grab the next one here. What a fun little project. This would, you know, we did include, I haven't decided if we're going to use it or not yet, but it's included. There's a little heart that you can put on the front of the fence. And if you want, you can do a print and cut or stamp something on there. This project would actually be great for Mother's Day as well. As a lot of our projects actually would work well for Mother's Day, especially the floral ones. All right, so that one's in place. I'm just going to run my finger along the posts. There we go. That's nice. Okay, and the last one here to wrap that part up, and then we're going to put the white posts up after this, finish it off, and then we'll just put our flowers together. And then, you know, quite honestly, after that, it's just a matter of arranging them and finishing this up, so it's not that bad. It's going to go quick. All right, again, focusing on the tips of the posts, making sure that this piece aligns nice and precise, and then the rest of it should pretty much fall into place for us. That looks pretty darn good. I'll put that down on my surface, press down, just like that. And there we go. Okay, so that looks really nice. Okay, now moving on here, I'm going to grab our little fence posts, the white ones, and we're going to get these applied on here. And now they're not exactly the same size, but the idea is to kind of create the illusion of depth and make it look dimensional without it actually being dimensional. So you can kind of see how that almost looks like a dimensional fence. It is going to be flush at the bottom, and it is going to be flush with the right side of the tops of the fence posts, but you're going to see that little shadow in the gray right behind it. Okay, so it may not be necessary to get the glue all the way out to the pointy little tips here, but we do want to cover the back of this as best as possible. Okay, it's kind of a flimsy little piece, so take your time with it. I might just put it down on my surface to make things easier for me. And just make sure that there's a little shadow of a blade of grass over there on the left side. Just make sure that you kind of get that covered as well. We don't want that peeling back. And again, focus on getting it flush on the bottom and then aligned to the right of the actual gray, in my case, gray fence posts. Okay, so there we go. And now you can see how that blue really adds a little dimension to this piece. It's nice. Okay, I'm just kind of adjusting. Oops. Hopefully that sticks. It should. All right, I'm going to work my way over this way. And we're going to do the same thing on this piece here. Okay, so let's get our glue on this guy here. Work a little bit up to the tip, but I don't, like I said, don't think you have to go all the way out to the tip of this. I don't think it's going to matter. There we go. And it's kind of an awkward little piece to hold. Again, as you're placing this down, focus on getting it aligned at the bottom first, and then make sure that it's adjusted to the right slightly. And voila. There we go. That looks good. You're going to put that down on your surface again and press down if you'd like. It does speed things up based on my experience. Okay, so there we go. Got a nice little fence post there. All right, and onto the back. Same thing. If you want to skip ahead, feel free. This would be the time. I'm kind of being redundant here, but I don't want to miss anything. And occasionally when I do something like this, I have some sort of epiphany or a thought that might be helpful. So if you got time to hang out with me, please do. Okay. All right, and just get the next one on. And just get that right in place. Make sure again that it's right aligned. And press that down, and then finally, one last piece of the fencing. And we've got our nice little grass that's going to go around the perimeter to finish it off, and then we can move on to our flowers, which you're going to be surprised how quickly they go together. And I definitely recommend inking them. It's really going to set them off. Okay, there we go. All right, final little piece here. Flush at the bottom. Very nice. And make sure that it's nice and aligned to the right. Perfect. And there we go. Attaboy, Leo. Okay. Okay, so that is looking nice. And our last step here is to take our little blades of grass and get those in place. And those are just going to go flush against the bottom here. And it should meet nicely in the corner here. So we'll just do one at a time. And I think we'll do a half at a time so that we don't try to overdo it. You don't need to put glue on the tips of the blades of grass, I don't think. Just stick with the bottom part here and go easy on the glue. You don't need a lot, but definitely get it out to the very edge here so that that doesn't come loose. Speaking of signs of spring, I know a lot of you, actually, you probably watched the videos all the way through. One sign of spring in this area is elder bugs, and they're these bugs that live on elder trees, and they kind of are a pest. They get everywhere. They're all over the place, and you may occasionally see one crawling across my desk. Don't think it's anything bad, and they're pretty harmless. And if I see one, maybe I'll pet one and tell them, hey, I'm busy working. Would you go do whatever you got to do, Mr. Elderbug? All right, so we got that one on there now. Okay, and that's pretty straightforward, but that is definitely a nice little touch, and you can see how the inking gives it a little more interest as well. So that's nice. All right, and we'll grab our other half and fold it right here in the corner. Okay, and I'm going to do the long side here. So get your glue towards the bottom. And just a double line, and then of course right out to the very edge. Get it nice and flush with the bottom. And it should pretty much butt up against its neighbor there. But again, make sure it's nice and flush. And hold that down for just a moment. Whoops. There we go. That looks great. And then we've got our last little piece here. Can kind of flare this out. Get your glue there on the base. And of course, again, right to the very edge. And just close that up. There we go. Okay. Yeah, be patient with that and let it hold for just a moment while it sets. So there's your container, and as I mentioned, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Not much to it. It's, you know, it's pretty much a square piece, so it's not going to be hard to work with. And then you want to take some foam. I've already pre-cut this, and try to get it so that it kind of fits in there snug, but without pushing the walls out. I would recommend hot gluing this down so it doesn't go anywhere, and then also maybe filling the perimeter with something that, you know, a rodent isn't going to eat, but something that'll kind of weigh it down a little bit, because it is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be top heavy, but it would help and make it nicer if it was a little more sturdy. So I've got these little plastic pellets that I'm going to fill this with, but for now that's what we're looking at and that's what we're dealing with. And it is now time to put together our flowers, which is gonna be fun and easy. So we're gonna start with our little floral stem, and this is paper wrapped. Michaels carries this, I believe Joanne carries it. If you're looking for it, just head on to Michael's website or Joanne's and do a search for paper wrapped floral stem. And now I gotta find my wire cutter. Here it is. And we don't need the full length of this. You might be able to actually get 3 flowers out of one of these because I've been trimming them after I was done by about that much. But I don't want to risk it, so I just fold it in half and cut it in half. Okay, and then what I'll typically do is take my floral tape and I'll wrap this whole thing with this light green floral tape. Just start at the top and just kind of wrap it down. Make sure you stretch it to release some of that tacky that's built into the tape. And I'll just wrap it all the way down the stem at an angle, just like that. I think wrapping it once is plenty. You can do it twice if you want, but I think it's just a waste. It covers really nice, makes it nice and tacky, works perfectly. Okay, so with that in place, the first thing that we're gonna put onto our flower is this little stamen piece here, okay? So we've already inked it, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a line of glue on the base of this, just like this, all the way down to this little tip here, this little round tip, and literally just gonna begin rolling it onto my floral stem. And you're gonna roll it onto itself as well. Okay, and try to keep it, there's a top part where the little, where this part ends. Try to keep the floral stem just below this area here. Okay, so get that on there and let that stick. Okay, and I'm gonna give that a few moments to dry, and I'll just work on the other one here, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Okay, so that's what that one's gonna look like. I'm gonna grab my other one and get my floral tape on this one, and we'll do the same thing with this one. So I'm showing you 2 flowers. You are going to do this a total of 6 times. Okay, I'm just doing it twice. I don't think I need to show you 6 times. I think twice is enough. 1 technically is enough, because you can always rewind and play it again, but maybe the second time, it's probably going to be an extra little tidbit here or there that I'm going to share, so I want to make sure I don't miss anything. All right, so again, we're going to grab our little stamen piece, the innermost part of our stamen, and just get our glue right on there. That might have been a little too much, that's okay. And just start at one end, preferably the end that doesn't have that little notch, or that little, not notch, but that little end, and just roll it onto itself while you're rolling it onto the floral stem. Okay, and you're probably gonna see a little bit of glue bunch up there at the end. If you put too much on, just wipe it off and hold that in place for a moment. Make sure that this part here is just slightly below or flush with the tip or top of our floral stem. Okay, so that one I'm gonna let set. This one should be pretty set at this point. And what we can do, just to kind of pre-train things, is I'm going to take in this case, a hibachi skewer, and I'm just going to wrap it around the skewer just to kind of flare it out. And that is going to make life easier later on when we actually have the flower on there, because it might be kind of hard to get a stick in there to wrap it around like this. So, and one other thing too is you can kind of wrap it at an angle so that they flare out a little more evenly. Okay, even if they don't, if they're bunched up together, that's okay too. There's nothing perfect in nature, so however yours ends up is fine. Okay, now we've got the second part of our stamen, and what we're going to do is the same thing. You'll notice that there's the little cut portions, but there's also this straight portion here. What I'd recommend doing is kind of, well, let's grab the thinner one here, is just kind of wrapping this around the, in this case, it's a hibachi skewer. Same little skewer that you would use to make shish kebabs. Okay, so I'm just kind of wrap those a little bit just to kind of get them going in that direction. Okay, because we want them flaring out. All right, so now, again, we're going to start with the shorter edge where the little stamens are shorter. The longer ones are towards this little tip here. Just FYI, because when you curl them, it's a little harder to tell which end is longer, which end is shorter. Okay, that's all the glue we need. And just place the bottom of this flush with the bottom of the previous stamen and just begin wrapping. And you're just going to wrap it onto itself again. And just kind of work it until it's completely wrapped. There we go. Try to keep it nice and level and even all the way through. And we get to the end, just kind of hold it in place. And that is not what it's going to look like when all is said and done, but we'll worry about that when we get there. Okay, you can kind of actually, now that they're somewhat curved, you can push them down more and flare them out, give them a little interest. Okay, now that stamen's in the way of these stamens, but that's okay. And there we go. Okay, so there's our little stamen. And onto our flower. I'm going to do the purple one here. So we want to fold everything at the score marks. You want to do a valley fold. Okay, because the flower is going to look like this once it's all said and done. And then take a thin dowel. I guess a hibachi skewer would work here, but I'm going to use this 1/4 inch, or maybe this isn't. This is a 1/4 inch? No. 3/8? No, maybe it's, I don't know. It's one of the thinner dowels that I have, and I'm going to curl these petals back to train them so they're not just flat like that. And you don't want to do it too far because we've got score lines here and you don't want to rip the flower. So bring it down as far as you can before it could potentially rip. Now we've got one little tab here. We're going to throw a little bit of glue on it. And just pop that underneath the neighboring petal and press and hold that down while it sets. Okay, and grab the existing part of the beginnings of the flower and just throw a little bit of glue around the bottom. I like to kind of cake it on a little bit, but not too much. And then take your stem, slide it through, and as you're pulling it down, give it a twist. It just goes in a lot easier if you kind of twist it. And then just pop that in all the way until it's flush. Okay, so there's the beginnings of your flower. Okay, so I'm going to let that set for a second so that it doesn't go bonkers on me. We'll go back to this. I'll show you this again. And as I mentioned, just taking and just kind of wrapping these little interior stamens around a dowel. In this case, it's a skewer, hibachi skewer, just to kind of give them a little bit of interest. Okay. It'll just be easier to work on them now instead of later. Okay, and grab the other stamen piece here. And see again, this is the shorter side, this is the longer side. It's just a little bit taller on this side. Let's go ahead and give these a curl. Just curl them. It's almost like, not that I've ever done this, but you know, it's kind of like when you curl your hair. I've seen it done. I don't live under a rock completely. Okay, there we go. And let's get our glue here, all the way down. And I'm gonna wrap that around, just like we did the first time. So yeah, and I'm kind of jumping back and forth here, but I just don't want, I want to let that glue set before I move on so that I don't risk destroying my flower. Okay, just wrap it around. There we go, all the way up to the edge there. And just hold that in your hand for just a moment. Let it set. And there we go. Okay. All right, so let's let that set. We can go back to this flower. All right, now we're gonna put our little calyx on here. And you wanna fold at the score marks here. And just like with the flower, there's one little section, that's our little tab. Okay, now the way that, actually, you know what, I'm gonna fold it in this way so the texture is up, because we're gonna end up training these down and I wanna be able to see the texture. So, so you're doing valley folds with the texture up, and then throw a little bit of glue on that tiny little tab, tuck it underneath or behind its neighboring petal or leaf, whatever you wanna call it. And just hold that for a moment while it sets. And actually, while it's setting, you can take your dowel, and I'm just literally taking and squeezing it between my finger and the dowel, and then just wrapping it around to give it that nice little curve, so it's not just standing up all straight like that. It's a nice relaxed flower. I don't really think it has much to worry about. Okay, so now we'll take our flower and throw a little bit of glue right at the bottom like that. Just like that. Okay, we'll take your calyx and just slide it up. Do the twist. And just pop it right up there. Just like that. Okay, so there's our little calyx now. And then all that's left is to put our little leaves on here. And you'll notice that there's one, I'll call them small and big. One's a little bit wider, one's a little bit skinnier. Okay, I'll call this one the large one, this is the small one. And before we do that, I'm gonna take my dowel and I'm gonna give it a nice little curve. So it's kind of, well, dealing with gravity, I guess. Just makes it look more natural. Okay, and we're gonna need to grab our floral tape because we're gonna wrap this around using our floral tape. So let's get our floral tape back out. And what I would do is I would start, just pull some out, stretch it out to get that tacky out of there, and just start wrapping it right underneath the calyx and work your way down a little bit. I'd go down about 1.5 inches or so and grab the larger leaf and just kind of prop it up against the stem so that it's just like that, and then just wrap that floral tape around it, making sure that it's nice and upright. You don't want it sideways. Okay, there we go. Just wrap it nice and tight, and then we can kind of flare it down a little bit, and there's that. And then the next leaf, I would offset it slightly. I'd grab a small one. The first one was a tall one, or a thicker one, and just place it just right about there, about another inch or so down, and just continue wrapping that. Wrap it a couple times, and then just run it down. You probably don't have to wrap the whole thing again. If you want, you can. I think I'm just gonna cut it off there, pull that down, and there is your flower. And again, that for our planter is probably way too big, so I'm just gonna trim off a little bit. Don't trim off too much, just a tad, okay? So there's that one, and you can see how my other ones turned out. Pretty much identical. And let's do one more. Okay, so we've got our stamens in place on this one, and here is our flower. I'm gonna fold everything at the score marks, just like we did. and grab our little dowel and just train that down. Now, for whatever reason, kind of actually maybe I'm kind of pulling on it while I curl it so that it doesn't bend the paper or crease it. I think if you, I don't know, it could just be my paper. Maybe it's really dry. It's leaving a little bit of a crease, but you know what? Sometimes you see that in nature, and that's okay. It's still gonna look good. Remember, we're after the end result, the overall aesthetic. I'm not gonna nitpick and worry about each and every little detail. We're gonna be careful and we're gonna do our best, but we don't need to freak out if one little thing doesn't work, because at the end of the day, when we get all this put together, it's gonna look stunning, so don't worry about it. Okay, so there's our flower, that's in place. Now we're gonna take our stem with our stamens on it and just throw some glue right on the bottom of that. Now this flower gets to do the twist. And I guess it's not really the flower doing the twist, it's the stem. That's not fair. Well, we just give it a little twist, there we go. Okay, so the flower's in place. All right, let's let that kind of set for a second. I'm gonna prop that up so there's no weight on it, which brings us back to our calyx. I'm doing a valley fold with the texture side up, and then we're going to throw a tiny little bit of glue on our tiny little tab here, tuck it behind its neighbor, and squeeze and hold. There we go. And while I'm doing that, and with this one I'm going to use a skewer instead of the thicker dowel, and you can see that it creates more of a curve. So, you know, the diameter of your tool, in this case, whether it be a dowel or whatever you use that's round, the diameter of it is going to determine how much curve it's receiving. Okay, so there we go. Grab my flower again, and let's get a little glue on the bottom. Yeah, I might have went a little heavy on that, but no one's going to see that, so it's okay. And there goes that stem doing the twist again. Pop that right up there. Just like that. There we go. Okay. And put that up there for a second. Again, we've got our leaves here. Got the big one and the small one. I'm going to grab the big one. Well, I'm going to grab the big one first because that's going to be more prominent in our display. Okay, so let's get our floral tape ready and stretched out. Give it a good stretch, release that tacky, and start wrapping. Wrapping this, not like Drake. Okay, and again, we're gonna go about maybe 1.5 inches or so. Grab our first leaf here and just tuck it right up to the stem, and then just wrap the floral tape around to get it to stick. And then let's go another 1.5 inches roughly, and offset it just a bit so it's not like right next to it. You want it maybe kind of off to one side a little bit just to make it seem more natural. And let's get that one wrapped. Make sure it is vertical and upright. There we go. And just wrap that all the way down. Or halfway, whatever works for you. There we go. Okay, then we can take and just kind of fold those down. And there is our next little flower. Now, one thing also that I'm going to do probably after this is all said and done is put a little gold liquid pearl on these little circular stamens, just to jazz those up a bit. And I'm going to cut that off. It's probably a little too long. There we go. All right, so our flowers are done, guys, which means it is now time to kind of arrange it, okay? And be able to determine whether or not these stems are too long. Okay, so this is going to be my front. I want a nice flower right dead center up in front. So I'm just going to pop this in. I'm going to see how tall or how high this sits. Okay, and that might be, I think it's a little too high. Now, what I recommend that you do is start your arrangement and then get it in place but then walk away from it for a little bit and come back to it and take a look through a fresh set of eyes and see if you like it or not. Oh, by the way, before we get started with this, if you have some moss, now would be the time to get that in there. This always gets messy, but it's fine. It's going to make it look nice. Just kind of, if you still have some room in the corners there, just shove that in there. And then I'll probably just take some scissors, and if I've got some stranglers and some unsightly ones sticking out, I'll just trim it until it looks the way I want it to look. Okay, so I'll leave that like that, and then I'll throw a little bit of this up here in front, cover up the front. Don't worry about making it perfect right from the get-go. Okay, so that's fine. Again, a lot of this is going to be covered up, but our first little flower, I want that to kind of be the focal point, nice front and center. Okay, then grab our next one here. I'll grab a purple one, and that's going to go. It's going to go in here. I want it to be a little bit taller. I can already tell the stem's way too big, so I'm going to trim it down a bit. And this guy is going to go right about here. Just like that. Maybe a little bit of a curve. There we go. Okay, so you can see what's happening here. All right, and then let's grab another little purple guy here. And we're going to put that one back there. Yeah, these stems are more than I needed, but it's okay. You never know until you do it. All right, so this guy, I want to keep the leaves somewhat prominent. So depending on where the leaves are, that may help determine what angle to put these in at. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I might move that over just a tad. And we're gonna go with I'm gonna do a pink one here. Let's cut that. Let me cut that a little bit more. There we go. And let's add this one here. Roughly about there. Okay, and I'm going to do a blue one up here, or purple one I should say. This one's going to be kind of creating kind of like a round overall shape. Okay, so they're not all flat, kind of almost like a dome. I'm going to put this one over here. Let's get that in there. Just be careful not to accidentally bend anything or warp anything. And then of course we got just enough room here for one more little guy. Trim that just a tad. Keep the leaves prominent. Just shove that in there, like so. Probably keep that one a little bit lower than the others. And there it is. Okay, so looking at this, well, I love it. I think it looks great as it is. But as we've done in the past, I do have some baby's breath here. And I think we're going to add some of this just to add a touch of, just a little pop of color here into the arrangement. It just adds a nice little contrast. I'll try to shove that into the foam. There we go. Good excuse to head over to your local Michael's, Hobby Lobby, or Joann's and grab one or two little sprigs of some baby's breath and add a little pop of white in here. to kind of jazz it up and make it complete. Hopefully you can see it from this angle here. I think it came out really nice, and I mean, it was pretty straightforward to put the flowers together. The base is absolutely a breeze. It's, you know, it's pretty much straight angles and very simple, but the overall appearance of this is awesome. And I know you guys love making the flowers. So, oh, by the way, again, this heart here, if you want, just glue these two layers on top of each other. And if you have a stamp, or if you want to do a print and cut, you can pop dot that right onto the front and have a little caption on there. Maybe you want to, again, do it for Mother's Day or whatever. But that's pretty much it. That wraps up this project. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, take a moment and hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. That lets me know that you love the videos and you love crafting with me. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle, take a moment and visit us on the official Dreaming Tree group on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, up at the top in the search box, type in Dreaming Tree Group, and join myself and the 10,000 plus other dreamers that inspire us daily. So I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.